Today I sit down with two Oscar-winning documentary filmmakers who won their Academy Awards in the 1990s. And now, after decades of experience working at the highest levels of the craft, I wanted to know, what advice do you have for early career documentary filmmakers today?
And the Oscar for documentary feature goes to Anne Frank Remembered, John Blair.
The first filmmaker who I sat down with was John Blair. In 1996, John won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature for his film Anne Frank Remembered, which is about the life and diary of Anne Frank. When describing how long he has been making documentaries, John goes with a terrifyingly long time.
I'm 163 years old. I've been doing it now for a terrifyingly long period of time. But boy, have I still got a lot to learn.
Now, one of the reasons I enjoy learning from people who have been in the documentary filmmaking game for much longer than me is that they help me understand the gifts and opportunities of making films in 2025. They remind me of how great we actually have it right now.
I started working in film and television when it was still film. By comparison with the equipment we've got today, the way tape works, the editing facilities we have now, pretty much anyone can make films for a dime. In those days, a roll of 16mm film, which lasted just over 10 minutes, cost today's terms, that's probably closer to $1,000 for 12 minutes of film. And that's before you have the equipment, the editing, etc., etc. So doing proper professional productions was fiendishly expensive. So count your luck would be my first advice.
But even though technology is making filmmaking more accessible than ever, John reminded me that there are also parts of the craft that our generation, making films today, might be missing out on.
One of the great difficulties for your generation, I think, is the absence of collegiateness. In other words, you're not in an environment where there are a lot of you, where you can exchange notes, where you can talk to each other, where you can learn from each other. And my advice to you and your generation is get together with people. And don't be timid about asking, about sharing. And the problem is that in our culture, at least, and I think that's true in the States as much as it is here, is there is a general competitiveness where people are not keen to share. But when you, as in my case, back in those days, and I know I sound like a nostalgic old fart, but when you're in a big institution and you're up in the bar drinking, or you're out in a hotel in Beirut, and you're learning all the time, just from the anecdotes, from the watching. And that's a really hard thing to replicate now, I think.
I don't know if all of you watching feel this way, but that idea definitely resonated with me when he said it. Despite all the tools and technology we have to connect with other filmmakers, I know that at times I have definitely felt isolated on my journey. There are steps that I've been trying to take to reduce that, whether it be connecting with others through this YouTube channel, or going to meetups, or hosting local filmmaker dinner events. But still, especially if you're freelance, which many of us are, this pursuit can feel isolating. So what keeps documentary filmmakers going for so many years? Well, that's where I started the conversation with Richard Trank. I'm always amazed by people who have had long careers in this field because it is so challenging. So I find that people who are in the game and have longevity have like a love for this art form. And so I'd love to know for you what that looks like. Why are you drawn to this? Richard Trank is a documentary director and executive producer who won the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature at the 1997 Oscars for the film The Long Way Home. That story documents the post-World War II Jewish refugee situation from liberation to the establishment of the modern state of Israel. After winning that Oscar in the 90s, Richard has continued on to a prolific career in filmmaking.
And I've done 18 features and shorts. Well, I mean, one of the things I love about it is how unpredictable it is. You know, it's kind of like improv. You know, you never know where it's going to take you, and you kind of just have to go with it. You know, you start with one thing but then the road takes you to a different place. And if you're really fixed in one way, then you close yourself off to what you might discover that may be even better than where you started. You just have to be open to where an interview takes you, where footage takes you. There's a thrill with what happens in the process.
I love that answer because I too love the variety of this work. Not only does every story we create pose unique challenges, but the craft of documentary filmmaking allows us to enter worlds we might never have had access to otherwise. It is a gateway to different cultures, communities, viewpoints, and ways of life. So I asked both Richard and John if they had to offer advice to themselves as early career documentarians, or to us as early career filmmakers working today, what would they say? And what was fascinating is that their answers did have some similar themes.
But I guess the advice I would give to myself has to do with what I was just telling you, which is don't be closed to where the film takes you. The film often tells you what it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And if you try and force it to be something else, then it really isn't, it's not real. The other thing that I think about, if I had to give advice, is, my first 2 or 3 films, I wasn't a director, I wasn't a writer. I mean, I was a writer, I had aspirations to direct, but I was working for somebody and learned so much. My advice would be, it's great if you can, out of the box, become a director and be successful, but learn the craft and watch other people's work and realize that each film is different. Each film requires a different approach. Some films need narration. Some films don't need narration. Some films require new footage to shoot. Other films, you can rely on archival footage and stills. Always be open.
So my main advice, honestly, is take advice. Wherever you can get it. Have the modesty to recognize that there are people out there who are really good. And if you can get the best out of them or get advice from them, if you can't actually work with them, then you've got to step on the ladder. My job as a director or producer is to get the best out of everyone I'm working with, who in and of themselves are better than me. And if I can bring all of that together, I can certainly make something that's way better than anything I could do on my own. The other thing is be true to yourself. You've probably Googled me, and therefore you know that I'm originally a political refugee from apartheid era South Africa. And that's embedded in my DNA. And whether I'm doing comedy or whether I'm doing fiction or drama or factual documentaries, having that sense of privilege, of being a storyteller who's privileged to tell other people's stories. If you can keep that in your head, it gives, I hope, a sense of modesty. And I suppose telling my younger self to remember that, for all the stuff sitting on one's shelves behind or whatever, keep that in mind.
And the last piece of advice that John offered is one I think about a lot on this channel. The craft of story, how stories function, how stories work, and how critical it is to develop our understanding of story so that we can apply it to the variety of projects that Richard talked about earlier.
When you drive a car, you don't really have to understand how an engine works. Making a documentary, having an awareness of craft skills is incredibly important. So being a storyteller, the issue of pacing, the more you learn, the more you know you don't know. But what you begin to get a feeling for is how the pacing of storytelling needs to work. I guess the one thing I would say to my younger self is, aren't I lucky that I had you as my younger self, that I now kind of know that when I walk into a film project, I have a toolkit that I can apply to the problems. And every time, my wife will tell you, every time there comes a point when I throw up my hands and I say, I haven't a clue how to make this film.
They're so hard. They're so hard.
Don't despair at that point. I always despair. So if I would say to my younger self, please, by the time you get to my age, teach me how not to despair.
I hope this video and all the others here on the channel will continue to help you not despair. I'll see you next week. And until then, go out and tell some stories.